You don't need 200 Procreate brushes. You probably don't even need 20. If you're busy creative, having a limited amount of time to actually draw, all those brushes are slowing you down, they're not helping you. So in this video I'm going to show you how to create full illustration in Procreate using just 5 essential brushes. Plus at the end I'm going to show you a few bonus ones if you want to level things up without wasting time. If you spend more time scrolling through brushes rather than actually drawing, well, you're not alone. Especially if you're drawing after work or in short bursts, you don't want to experiment every time you open Procreate. So instead of giving you more, I'm going to give you less, but better. These are the brushes that I personally use when I want to draw fast, stay consistent and don't overthink everything. Let's start with the most important one. That's the 6B pencil. And honestly, if I had to pick just one brush, it would probably be this one. You can find it in the sketching category. I like to start super loose and not to try to be precise at all. The goal is just to block in the shapes as quickly as possible. This is especially important if you're drawing after work or when you're tired and you don't want to spend energy on perfection this early. Once the base is there, I go over a few lines just to clarify the structure, but still keeping it messy. The nice thing about this brush is that it doesn't force you to be clean. It actually encourages a more natural, sketchy look. Now this is where it gets really useful. If you slightly tilt your pencil, you can see how the stroke becomes softer and more textured. This is something a lot of people overlook, but it basically gives you two brushes into one. For example, when I'm drawing hair, I use very light pressure and slight tilt. This creates these soft, irregular strokes that look way more natural than perfectly clean lines. If you try to do this with a clean brush, it usually looks too stiff. Same thing for shadows. Notice how I'm not switching brushes here, I'm just changing the angle and pressure. This keeps your workflow fast because you're not constantly going back and forth between tools. And you can even use it for highlights, especially if you want something a bit more textured or not perfectly smooth. So instead of thinking this is just a sketching brush, think of it as your sketching, shading and textured brush all in one. And if you're using the new brush library, the Warata brush in the pencils category gives a very similar feel. So you can try it too. Next, Studio Pen in the inking category. This is where you switch from messy to controlled. I usually lower the opacity of my sketch and go over it with the clean lines like this. Notice how the lines end very cleanly, there is no texture, no rough edges. This is perfect when you want your illustration to look more polished. You can also use this for outline-only illustrations. Especially if you like that minimal style, it works really well. Now, if your lines look a bit wobbly, especially when you're drawing fast, here is a quick tip. Duplicate the brush, go to the Brush Studio settings by clicking on the already selected brush, and under Stabilization increase the Streamline slider up to at least 70–75%. This basically stabilizes your hand movement so your lines come out smoother. It's a small tweak, but it makes a huge difference when you don't have time to redraw lines multiple times. In the new library, Leafy brush in the pens category is a great alternative of Studio Pen. Now let's add some texture. This is where drying comes in. You can find it in the inking category. I mainly use it to fill in shapes like this. If you zoom in, you can see it's not completely flat. There is a subtle texture that makes the illustration feel less digital. Compare this to a completely flat feel. The texture one just feels more alive. And again, this is about speed. You don't need to add extra detail later, the brush is already doing some of that work for you. And you can apply the same stabilization trick here, just duplicate the brush, go to Brush Studio by clicking again on the selected brush and add a bit of streamline. For adding more depth into the illustrations, here comes the 2B compressed brush. I use this mostly for shadows and highlights. Instead of doing one heavy shadow or highlights, I build it up slowly. This gives you more control and a more natural result. And you can see this grainy texture, it's what makes it feel less flat. In the new Procreate brush library, Nut Grove brush in the charcoals category is a great match. And the last essential brush, that's the soft brush. This is one of the easiest ways to make your subject stand out. Just adding a subtle halo-like shape behind your subject like this, already create separation from the background. And depending on the depth that you want to create, you can either keep the opacity to 100% or make it slightly lower. You can also use it for light effects like soft sun rays. I usually build this up slowly by making multiple strokes with the brush and lowering the layer's opacity, so it doesn't overpower the illustration. And this is exactly what I did in my 30 minutes drawing after work video. So if you want to see how all of this comes together in real time, go check it out. The link is gonna be in the description box below. Now, if you want to go a little further without overcomplicating your workflow, these are a few bonus brushes I use. You don't need them, but they can make certain things faster or easier. First, monoline. At first glance, it looks very similar to Studio Pen, but the key difference is there is no pressure sensitivity. So no matter how hard you press, the line stays exactly the same width. That might be useful when you need your line to stay consistent no matter how you are pressing with the pencil. This makes it perfect for simple shapes and more graphic-like illustrations. If you want a really clean, almost vector-like look, this is the brush to use. So think of it like this. Studio Pen equals more expressive, monoline equals more controlled and uniform. And in the new Procreate library, the Stanley brush in the basics category gives a similar result. Next, oil paint brush. I usually don't use this for the whole illustration, but for small details. It has this very natural brush-like texture, which instantly makes parts of your drawing feel more organic. I like using it for small shadows or highlights, especially in the background or for secondary elements. It helps break the digital look and adds a bit more depth without much effort. So instead of adding more layers or overworking details, you can just use this brush strategically. Next, mint bush brush from the basics category in the new Procreate library. This one is really nice for softer shadows. It sits somewhere between a textured brush and a smooth one. Comparing to the to-be compressed brush, mint bush texture is very tight and compact. Even though it's textured, it feels more filled in, almost like a soft, grainy solid. While for to-be compressed brush, the texture is much messier and there's more visible space between the grain. Even though both are very textured, mint bush gives you more coverage, while to-be compressed lets more of the canvas breathe through. I usually build shadows gradually like this, so they blend nicely without looking too stiff. Great option if you want more opaque type of shading but still keep the texture. And finally, Spires brush. You can find it in the organic category in classic Procreate library. I use this at the very end, just by going slightly over the illustration. It adds this subtle overall texture that ties everything together. It's not something you notice immediately, but without it the piece can feel a bit too clean. Just don't overdo it. Very light pressure is totally enough. So again, you don't need all of this, but if you want to expand your toolkit without slowing yourself down, these are great additions. But honestly, if you just stick to the first 5 brushes, you can already create complete, polished illustrations. And before you go, I would actually love to know what are your favorite Procreate brushes, either default ones or paid ones. Let me know in the comment section below. I'm always curious to know what other people are using. And if you found this video helpful, you can support my channel by liking and subscribing. I'll be sharing more videos like this, focused on simple, practical ways to improve your workflow as busy creatives. Thank you very much for spending the time with me, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye!